As political parties focus on pleasing the groups of people most likely to vote for them, the needy in our society are being ignored and marginalised. What ideas do you have for fostering a compassionate and just society where hardship, need and isolation are addressed?
It's such a big question, and the starting point has got to be how we give power and voice back to people who are marginalised. My PhD is on community development. I spent a lot of time studying community development. I was an aid worker for almost 10 years where we were trying to give voice and support to people who just are ultimately disempowered. I mean, disempowered in the most fundamental ways.
I think the first thing is that we need to encourage those people who don't generally vote to do so. I think it's been interesting to see how a lot of politicians have been aiming what they're offering at the age group between 40 and 85, and it's because they tend to vote more. So I've been saying to excuse me. So I've been saying to a lot of students and younger people, please vote, because then you'll find that a lot of the attention is focused on them.
The way in which communities work, the way in which families work, the way in which neighbourhoods work, the idea of flexibility and respect and support, those kind of values are the kind of things I think we should be promoting in our world. Not dog eat dog, not competition, not everyone for themselves, not, make a quick buck. I think the sooner we rid ourselves of those notions, the better our society will be.
So we don't want to see anybody suffering. Everybody should have a decent life, especially in this our economy, which is one of the top 10 economies in the world. We should be able to make sure that everybody gets treated reasonably and with consideration everywhere and always. And I personally would like to see a lot more love in the world, because I think it rebounds. More and more people being nice to each other, then it creates more of that. But if we just neglect people, then it leads to trouble.
I think the crucial first step is to be listening to people from different groups who've got concerns, so that we make sure that our political system is responding to them. And to give you an example, I've been incredibly impressed by the Speak Out movement in the city. They've been working with Grace Air, with MENCAP and other organisations to make sure that people with learning difficulties are able to voice their needs, their concerns. We had a fantastic hustings just a couple of weeks ago with people with learning difficulties really putting the politicians on the spot, and rightly so, asking about issues like, where is the money for the wheelchairs? Where is the real support for people with learning difficulties? So, number one, we need to be ensuring that those people get a voice in the system and that they're heard.
I love that you talk about these issues in these words and they use those concepts of hardship and alienation and justice and fairness. Those are the motivators I've had throughout my life and everything I've done. And it's also why I'm in the party that I'm in, because it was born of the struggle of those who were most alienated and hard done by. So I see that tradition and those values informing everything the party does, excuse me, and everything I do. So my interest is in capturing and reminding ourselves of what sort of values we want and what sort of society we want to create.
Now, some people obviously were breaking the law. They're going to have to go to prison and be rehabilitated if they can. But other people need a chance. And quite often they've been blocked or they've been bullied all their lives. And very often it's the innocent person who's been bullied by somebody or other, or sometimes by both parents or brothers and sisters. They're the ones who we need to pick up and give them a new chance and a new sense of hope. And there's really only one way to do it, and that's to get involved.
We're just here as agents to promote the notion of democracy. Okay, and that's complete democracy. It's not just, you put an X in a ballot box for parties which are all signed up to big business. It's the idea that you can get involved in decisions about everything.
I also think it's important that in society in general, we stop automatically thinking the worst of people. Sometimes we have to say, gosh, that person's having a hard time. I must assume that they're in that situation because of misfortune, not because of their own making. And I think too often we as a society see people in difficult situations, and maybe as a form of comforting ourselves, we say, oh well, it's probably their own making. And it's not often the case, and I think that would help if we developed a benefit of the doubt compassion. I think that would go an awful long way to helping people in greatest need.
We need to make sure the politicians are put on the spot so that they get to respond to them. And essentially, we do need, I think, to challenge the values that underpin the way that society appears to run today.
I subscribe to a world in which it's from each according to their ability and to each according to their needs. That's the yardstick for politics for me.
The gagging law is something that we just don't talk about enough. The gagging law is preventing, from September last year, for 6 months before an election, the gagging law prevents charities from making comment about public policy which relates to a party's manifesto. This was a law that was brought in by this government. I completely and utterly opposed it, as did the voluntary sector. A great example of it is that last November I had Dan Jarvis, who's Labour's shadow spokesperson on the centenary of the First World War and for veterans, came to visit me, and I wanted to take him to a local veterans group to meet local veterans in the run-up to Remembrance Day. The the veterans group I spoke to said we can't have him here because of the gagging law.
And I'm very proud that my brothers in the Salvation Army, you do take the time to go out and talk to anybody anywhere and see if they can help them. And I know other churches do. And that's the sort of thing we need to do. We need to just give a bit of hope, give a bit of love, and that will help to make things happen. Do we need money behind that? Yes, we do.
You know, we live in a society where the market is God, where all of us are encouraged to consume. There's a lovely quote by Professor Tim Jackson where he talks about an advertising industry that persuades us all to spend money we don't have on things we don't need, to make impressions that don't last on people we don't care about.
In this city, we have almost 3,000 people using food banks. We have 150 rough sleepers. We have almost 20,000 families on the housing waiting list. I mean, our figures are shocking. We have pockets of child poverty that we don't talk about. There are stories of Brighton that are not about the wonderful things we celebrate, like art and literature and the digital creative industries. But we have stories of deprivation, alienation and marginalisation that simply don't capture the attention of those who talk about Brighton. And I think our task is to hear them and to address them.